Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Hirsch. I'm the product coach, founder of Break a Pencil Consulting. I'm excited to be with you here today, and just want to thank you all for sharing your time with me. So we'll only use up the full hour, depending on how many questions there are. I'll go through an agenda here in a moment, but what we're here to talk about today is this idea of a year-end push, a secret weapon for you to use for success as a product manager in Q4. Certainly, all quarters throughout the year matter, but Q4 tends to matter a little bit more. Obviously, if you're a business that runs on a different fiscal year than the calendar year, your Q4 might be different, but I think all of the same principles will apply. So, just as a quick agenda, I'm going to spend a minute or two just introducing myself and introducing Break a Pencil Consulting to you. Then we'll jump in. We'll talk about the year-end push. What is it? What are the benefits of it? And then we'll spend a little time talking about the template. I'll give you some strategies for implementation, do a quick wrap up, and then we'll open up for questions. And as I had mentioned in many of my posts or emails, I will note down obviously who's all here today. And for any of you who sign up for the upcoming Product Leadership 101 Masterclass that I'll be doing, you'll get $500 off the cost of that masterclass. That'll be starting later this month. The start date and the specific days we're going to meet is going to depend a little bit once we get the cohort established, so I can make sure it works with everybody who's signed up. Okay. Just a quick bit about me, where I went to school. I'm a UCLA grad through and through. I did my master's and bachelor's in mechanical engineering at UCLA, went to work for a while, came back and did my MBA also at UCLA at the Anderson School of Management. I've worked in a variety of places. Some of the more common names or household names are Sony, Qualcomm, T-Mobile, and ProQuest. ProQuest now called Clarivate because they've been acquired, but one of the largest providers of academic content databases for universities and research. And finally, in addition to doing what I do as a product coach, I also teach. I'm a adjunct professor at both the Seattle University School of Business and the University of Washington Business School, where I teach strategy to both undergrads and graduate students. These classes tend to be mostly case studies where we talk about kind of some of the fundamental principles of strategy, and then we dig into various case studies of different companies to understand kind of what's worked, what hasn't worked, and help people help these students think strategically, put everything together and think strategically, which, if you think about it, is pretty much what we do as product managers every day. Uh, I get this question occasionally, why do I coach? I coach because I love helping product managers and product marketers and product leaders develop professionally, grow and learn, and really get the most out of what I consider to be the best job in the world. I love being a product manager and being a product leader, and when I've had the opportunity to do product marketing as well. And I really love helping others get the most out of that role. I find that it's a role that many of us fall into from different places, whether we come from marketing or engineering or design or project management. And I also find that it's a role that oftentimes we're just thrown in the deep end without any real support or coaching or training or instruction. And so this is where I try to help my clients. That kind of blends into Break a Pencil Consulting. So it's all about professional development for product managers and product leaders. And I do this through two different ways, individual coaching and cohort-based learning. So if you want to stay up to date with all the things I've got going on, I tend to kind of keep quite busy and active on LinkedIn. And then, of course, every other week on Mondays, I publish my newsletter called Broken Pencils, which always starts out with a fun fact, then goes into kind of the main body of whatever it is I'm writing about that particular newsletter. And then I always finish it with a content recommendation. It might be a book recommendation. It might be a podcast recommendation, just something that I think is worth paying attention to if you're interested. I want to start with a story. On August 14th in 2003, so a bit of time ago, I was in New York City. At the time, I was living in Los Angeles, but I was working for Sony. And I was divisionally or organizationally, I was part of Sony Corporation of America, which was headquartered in Midtown Manhattan in New York City. And I was there, and it was a Thursday, and I had plans that evening to fly from New York down to Florida to meet my wife and two daughters for a long family weekend to visit my in-laws. And so I had checked out of my hotel that morning. I was in the office on the, I don't know, it was about the 40th or 50th floor of a high rise in Midtown Manhattan. And in the early part of the afternoon, maybe 2 or 3 o'clock, I don't remember exactly, the power went out. Okay. It's a little surprising in an office building and in Manhattan. Look down at the, street way down below, and within a few minutes, it's gridlock because we've quickly learned that it isn't just our building or our block, but it seems like most of Manhattan is out of power. So we're not entirely sure what's going on just yet. A little bit concerning if you look at the year. 2003 is pretty close to when 2001. So it was a little concerning of what's going on, but okay, fine. So, and immediately this is kind of what started to look like, right? It was gridlock trying to get out of the city. Most people, just started to walk. And so I decided that I got to go somewhere and move somehow and either get to the airport if flights are going to continue or what. So I took my suitcase and I walked down the 50 some odd flights of stairs, which was something in the sweltering heat, in a suit, no less. And basically said, I got to just keep moving forward. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know what step's going to be next, but I'm going to keep trying to make steps forward between me and basically Florida. So I got down. I talked to my wife on the phone, who then told me it's not just New York, which, by the way, in the evening, that's what it looked like, where there was not a single light on. There were some lights in like hospitals because they were running on generators, but other than that, everything was dark. And she told me that it was not just New York or not just Manhattan, but I don't know if you can see here, the entire sort of Northeast had gone dark. So it was a bit of a perfect storm of chain of events that sort of started, I believe, somewhere in Ohio and took out millions and millions of people from power. So I started walking. I ended up walking about 50 blocks north to a friend's apartment. Again, I had checked out of a hotel, so I didn't have any place to stay, and asked if I could at least, sleep on their couch for the evening. So I did that because at this point I had learned that airports were shut down, they weren't operating, and I was hopeful that by tomorrow morning things would be a little bit more organized. I got up early, uh, grabbed a cab. There was nobody out or on the streets, and it was dark. It was a little interesting driving as the cab was sort of driving freely without any stoplights. I got to the airport, and it was absolute chaos. Most of the people were waking up. They had been sleeping all night at the airport. Again, I'm just continuing to move forward. I think I was supposed to fly, I don't know, probably American Airlines. They don't have a clue what's going on. They're not anywhere equipped to even open up. There isn't an American Airlines employee to be found. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I should just go back. And this is when I actually met somebody who said, no, I'm going to keep moving forward. And I said, all right, let's do it. And so we partnered up, and he and I went to JetBlue. He had this idea that JetBlue, a new airline at the time, would be a lot more effective. So we got to JetBlue. Sure enough, they were at least there and trying to operate. It was chaos, but we managed to get somebody's attention. And because I had travel booked on JetBlue for several months later, so I had a JetBlue ticket. They took that as kind of collateral with my credit card number and got us on a flight that was one of the few flights that got out that day and down to Florida. So one of the main lessons I learned that day is keep moving forward, always take steps forward, which I think is one of the main themes of what I'm trying to talk about today with this year-end push. In addition to what I'll talk about in a second, which is about being planful and planning ahead. Um, as everybody is sort of rushing to the end of the year, whether it's rushing for getting to the holidays or getting through the year or hitting their goals or whatnot, ultimately you want to be this guy in the front, not that guy way in the back. And that doesn't happen by accident. That happens because, several miles earlier in this race, this guy in the front started to make a move and a push forward, which is exactly what we're going to talk about today. And then again, I did all my degrees at UCLA. So the great John Wooden, coach from UCLA, said, "Failing to prepare is preparing to fail." And so I think that's really, really important as we jump into what we're going to talk about today. So what is the year-end push? I mean, at the end of the day, it's a one-page template. That's it. But it's a one-page template that I put together for a specific purpose and for a specific reason. I encourage product managers that I work with to fill this out somewhere in August or September, not later than that, and it's probably premature earlier than that. So right now is the time. We're kind of in that sweet spot. And then once you've completed it, the key is to share it and use it as a way to share with your management chain so they can at least see your proactive planning, and with your stakeholders, because this is going to be key, because without your stakeholders being on board and aligned with you, it's very difficult for us as product managers to get things done. One of the things I often say, right, is as product managers, we don't really do anything, right? We just get people around us to do the work that needs to be done. And so it's super important that we get our stakeholders aligned. And the idea is we use this to provide a thoughtful plan for our priorities for Q4 and what it is we're trying to do and accomplish. Now, ideally, as a product manager, you're focused on outcomes to the business, but not all businesses have come around on really being able to prioritize and focus and define things as outcomes. We're still a lot of times in what are typically called feature teams, where we're being asked to just generate output, finish this feature, do that feature. And while that's ideally, not ideal, I should say, you want to be focused on outcomes over output. Either way, regardless of the business that you're in or the type of the way product management is at least sort of looked at and structured within your company, it's a thoughtful plan of your Q4 priorities and what you want to get accomplished. This is not about working harder or more hours. It's about working smarter, and it's about getting everyone around you jump started. So the reason it's crucial for Q4 success is a couple things happen in Q4, which I think are interesting. It gets compressed from all sides, on the front end and the back end, personally and business wise. So what do I mean by that? Most people are just coming back from vacation. They're, wiping the sand out of their eyes, kind of dusting off, looking around, figuring out what to do next. And then at the end of the quarter, they're off figuring out where they're going for the holidays or what they're doing and those kinds of things. Professionally or business-wise, Q4 gets really compressed when things like budgets and planning and then even holiday parties and reviews and all that stuff. So there's all sorts of things that are competing for everyone's time and attention in that very, very crucial fourth quarter. And so the goal here is you get your stakeholder alignment and you get some jump start. And a benefit is you'll end the year on a high note, which is always good when it comes time for getting budgets, and always good personally and professionally when it's time for reviews. So what are the benefits of doing this? There's a few, maybe more than a few. Personally, this is about career growth. I mentioned earlier that product managers oftentimes just kind of get thrown into the deep end. Most product managers I've worked with don't have somebody that's really looking after their career for them. And so they have to do it themselves. And this is one way to do it, right? If you want your career to grow, oftentimes you're going to have to take some of that on your own and show that initiative, show that sort of leaning in, if you will. And so doing something like this year-end push and this planful Q4 will help with career growth. It'll help give you visibility, right? Because again, I mentioned I want you to share this with your management chain, so not just your direct manager, but maybe even a skip level so they can see what you're doing. And it's going to show that you have a bias for action. All of these things are important when the higher ups at some point are talking about who are we thinking of promoting, or what sort of increase or bonus should somebody be able to get. It's good to show visibility, and it's good to show a bias for action. For your team, right? And I mean this not just as product managers, but the team that you're working with, the engineering team and the designers that you're working with. This is all about alignment, making sure everybody's on the same page. This is all about being productive. Let's figure out what we're going to focus on, and by definition, what we're not going to focus on. And finally, let's get jump started, right? I want to get the engineers working again fast. I want to get the marketing team working again quickly. And the sooner that I can get them going, the sooner they're going to focus on my stuff rather than other competing priorities that may be coming their way. And finally, for an organization, right? So this is kind of, if you're a product leader, encouraging everybody on your product team to do something like this really gives a lot of strategic focus and will drive improved outcomes, right? Just simply being more effective, more focused, you'll get better outcomes. So the template, you can all go and grab it if you haven't already. If you just go to my website, breakapencil.com, in the nav bar, there's a button called Downloads, and it'll take you to a few different downloads, but one of them is the year-end push template. It's there in PowerPoint form and also in Google Slide link. So what I'm going to do from now is let's dive into it. So this is the template. I'm not an artist. I'm not a designer. So it's functional. I don't know that I would call it beautiful. So if you want to beautify it in any way, please have at it. But the point here is I try to get all of the important pieces in a compact, readable, and concise way so that others will pay attention to it. A 4-page written document is likely not going to get read. So kind of here's what it looks like. So I'm just going to go sort of section by section now and just talk about what we do here, right? So the idea I'm hoping is that all of you after this call can go ahead and download the template or make a copy off of Google Slides and start to fill it out, and then start to do this work and start to, again, reap the benefits of where a lot of this constantly moving forward and being very planful comes about. So the top right, this is the easiest section. Your name, your area of responsibility. A lot of us sometimes are product managers of certain products or certain aspects of products. So just kind of indicate that. And then the date created. So just real simple kind of summary of what that's about. There's 2 of all these sections that are probably the most important. This is one of them. Q4, key initiatives and success metrics. You're not limited to just 3 because I only left you with 3 columns. You can do 2, you can do 4. I don't know that I'd go more than that. 4 starts to get a lot. If we're working on so many different things, how many of them are you really focused on and really going to get accomplished before the end of the year? Remember, there's always other things that jump in the way. So let's put a description of what those are. What's the impact? And really what impact I want to show is what's the impact to the business or the impact to the customer, right? I don't, if you're deploying a feature, okay, fine, but why? Is it going to allow certain customers to get access to something more easily? Is it going to allow you to sell into a new segment of customers because they've been asking for it, right? What's the impact to the business and the customer? Metrics, how are you going to measure that? Right now, if it's something that you're not going to finish until the end of the year, maybe your metrics are just completion, right? Deployment. But maybe your metrics are, if it's something that's going to be rolling out sooner, 2 or 3 customers, starting to trial it, or getting some customer feedback, or making sure that sales training is completed so that sales is now armed and equipped to go out and sell. And then a quick status, right? And you can use whatever tends to be the status indicator of choice in your business, red, green, yellow, and whatnot, just to show if this is on track, not on track, and or potentially at risk. Oftentimes, I think that additional resource requirements are unspoken, and that's a huge problem. If you have an expectation as a product manager that you need additional resources or additional budget or some additional external support, a partner or a vendor, somebody to help with something, and you do not have that secured right now, then you need to make that explicitly clear. And this is the chance and the moment when your manager can go and help get what you need in order to complete this. Most likely, you should not have a lot here, right? Because this isn't, you're not starting from scratch. You've been doing this work leading up to this. So hopefully there isn't a lot here. But if there are things here, this is when you want to call them out because you're running out of runway for when anything can be done about it. Risks and mitigation, always important in my opinion to at least identify what they are and identify how you might mitigate them. Earlier in my career, I really pushed back and struggled on, honestly, why are we writing risks and mitigations? Like, there's lots of risks, there's always things. What I learned was there's two benefits to doing this, right? One is you think about things that might go wrong. But if you're a product manager, you're probably always thinking about things that might go wrong, right? You know this stuff. You're looking for it. It's in your brain. You're aware of it. So it's not like forcing you to write these things down is going to make you realize, oh, there's a risk I hadn't been aware of. Probably the most important reason for doing this is credibility and confidence building. It's that the folks who are reading this document, the higher ups, your manager, their manager, realize that you've thought about this, that you're not just sort of going at it, Wild West, guns blazing. You've actually put some real thought about this, and what could go wrong and how you might prevent those things from going wrong or deal with them if they go wrong. So to me, this is all about exuding that confidence that you know what you're doing. I said there were two sections here that I think are the most important. Q4, key initiatives and success metrics was the first. This one I think is the second. The stakeholder alignment plan. Product managers manage products, not people, and product managers often don't do things, right? We don't, deploy marketing resources. We don't go out and run sales calls. We don't write software. But we need all those things to happen, and we need all those people to do those things so that we can be successful. So to me here is identify the stakeholder or stakeholder groups and tell me, the audience of this document, how you're going to get them aligned. What are you going to do? Are you going to have a meeting with them next week? Are you going to meet with them periodically? Are you going to sit down with them and ensure that they have enough people or resources allocated to this, that the marketing team has the budget earmarked for what they need to do? Make sure that everybody that is involved in getting this accomplished and getting this over the end of Q4 finish line knows what is needing to be done. And again, by doing this explicitly and by doing this early, because we're not even in Q4 yet, you're going to get the best of these people compared to others who come to them a little later with a less organized ask. Because this is the end of the year, because you've got to manage your own career, because you've got a review coming up at some point, I always want to tie this back to how is this making you a better product manager? So what are the personal development goals that you're focused on growing, gaining, learning, getting better at? What are the skills you're trying to develop? And how is this work actually helping with that? Right? So that it's not just, hey, I'm trying to develop, I want to be, better at managing stakeholders, or I want to be better at writing use cases, or I want to be better at understanding, engineering trade-offs. Okay, great, but now tell me, what are you planning on doing so that at the end of Q4 I can look back and see and say, what have you done that helped you develop that skill? So now I know you want to develop that skill, and now I have evidence that you have done the work to help develop that skill. And so that's perfect material for your manager to plug right into your review and use that for acknowledging and understanding where you've grown and developed. And last but not least, just a catch-all, right? Additional notes, considerations. There's always some additional things that are worth mentioning, so some space for you to handle that. Here's an example of one I just sort of filled out as an example, right? And so you can see I've got on the top left, I've got two key initiatives, right? A partner portal and a feedback widget. Notice these are output. They're not outcomes, right? They're actual finishing of a particular piece of functionality. I try to indicate in the impact, okay, not just doing it because somebody said, but here's what we expect it to be able to have an impact on customers. How am I going to measure whether or not, this has actually been somewhat successful? So I'm going to have some folks using it and kind of what the status is. Additional resource requirements as an example here. I'm not going to go through all of this in detail, but yeah, you have this also with the template, this sample. Stakeholder alignment, right? So partner sales, I'm going to have a weekly check-in call with them. So what does that do? Writing that down means I'm forcing myself to have that weekly call. When I sit down and review this document with the partner sales leadership, I'm putting them on notice that I expect to have a weekly call with them. And I'm now telling my manager and any other senior leaders that this document gets in front of how I'm ensuring partner sales is connected at the hip with the work we're doing here. Same thing with other examples here of customer support and finance. What are my skills? I want to be better at understanding how and when to keep finance informed. I'm notorious for forgetting to include them because I don't know. I just don't like talking to finance, maybe. So notice that I'm working with finance in my stakeholder alignment plan. I'm included in their discussions with the sales team. And so that's how I'm improving at this particular skill. I'm also maybe not very skillful at customer discovery or customer interviews. Little shy. I don't exactly know how to kind of get the best out of those customers. Um, this is for needed to follow up on some of the customer feedback. So if you notice, one of the initiatives was this feedback widget. Okay, well, I'm going to go now, and once we get feedback from customers, I'm going to reach out to them and try to understand more. So as a result of this, I am developing that skill. And then in my notes, I said, I'm out this week and that week or whatever, just so everyone's aware. Feel free to customize this. I mentioned however you see fit, right? It's not set in stone. It is for you to make your own. I am very much a proponent of using AI and specifically some of these large language models that are available to us today to help do better work, do produce better output, produce things more rapidly, more efficiently, be more productive. I've spent a little bit of time talking about how product managers can use AI in their day to day. I'm going to spend some more time in the coming month or two talking about that a lot. So again, if you kind of keep connected with the stuff I'm doing, you'll hear more about it. I use ChatGPT and Claude by Anthropic probably about close to daily. Maybe not quite daily, but very, very close to it. And so I would encourage you, if you haven't, to, start, working with some of these tools. And some hints about it are, it's not like a search engine where you put something in, you get results, and you're done. Think of it as a very efficient and very inexpensive intern. Hey, I want to do this. They come back to you with this. Okay, well, that's not great. Let's go and fix that. And so it's a conversation. And I'll have more to say about that in the future. But think about it with getting ideas for risks and mitigation, getting ideas for what stakeholders should I be aligned with, right? Put into the LLM, here are the goals I have. I'm a product manager. Who are the stakeholders you think I need to stay aligned with, and what's the best way to do it? And you'll be surprised. It'll come back with some good suggestions. And then personal development goals, same thing. Great. Now that you have an understanding, ChatGPT, of the goals that I have, how does this tie into where I should, where I can or should develop personally? So how do you do this? What's the implementation? All right, you have the template. I've walked you through how to fill it out. What do you do? How to integrate this into your current workflow. There's no rocket science here. I think you just do it. It's not necessarily even going to be, part of this overall workflow. You do this document, and then you introduce it into the process. Maybe you share it with your manager during your next one-on-one. Get their alignment. They may want to put their fingerprints on it and say, well, I don't know about this and change that. Get their alignment on it, and then you can start to share it widely. Use this document repeatedly with your stakeholders, right? Whenever you are meeting with them, bring this out, make sure they have it, reference it quickly at the beginning. Hey, just a reminder, this is where I'm focused. Hopefully you guys are aligned with this. If anything on here doesn't seem right, let me know now, please, so we can work through those issues. So communicate with your stakeholders using this document. And finally, common pitfalls. I see a few things that I want to at least warn you to. The first is the appearance of alignment. This is incredibly common where everybody is nodding up and down. Yes, we all agree. I agree. I agree. I agree. But if you go and ask each person to describe what they all agree on, they're all a little bit different. So this appearance that we're aligned. So this is where forcing those conversations through this kind of a document will help try to close that gap. Stakeholders considering only one initiative at a time. I find this befuddling, but very common. Engineering team, can you get this done? They look at it. Yeah, no problem. We got that. We can do it. Great. Excellent. 2 days later, you say, engineering team, can you get this done? They look at it. Yeah, no problem. Now, in your mind, it's additive to the first thing you asked about. In their mind, they're just looking at it and saying, yeah, I can do that, or I can do that, or not and. So you got to watch out that they're not just looking at what you're asking them about, but they're considering that in the overall body of work that you're asking them to do, and others likely are as well. And then last pitfall is not clearly tying success to your additional resource requirements. So that's why that section's there, right? Because if you can't get that $10,000 budget approved for an external vendor to create a sales document or a sales plan or a sales presentation, then you won't be ready for sales to go and sell this starting January 1st because you won't have that done by the end of the year, right? You won't have that product marketing person to be able to put that together. So you've got to make sure that you're tying your success to resource requirements, which is also why that's in there. And last but not least, it's human nature to want to promise a lot. Fight the urge, right? If you think you've got 4 key objectives for Q4, maybe see if maybe you can just do 3, or if you can whittle that down. Under promise and over deliver. I can't express that enough. It's incredibly rare to people have to under promise and over deliver. So if you can pull that off and do it, really, really good things tend to happen. I'm about done. Just quick wrap up, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. It's September 10th, folks, right? We're still 20 days away from the official start of Q4. So there is plenty of time to get this done, which is why I wanted to get this stuff out there and get this webinar done earlier, because there is plenty of time for you to go do this. So I would encourage all of you to get out there and download the template, start filling it out, start getting going. Reminder, Product Leadership 101, Foundations of Strategic Product Leadership is the masterclass I'm going to be starting in the fall. So likely later this month or very early October. Again, as I mentioned, once the cohort's formed, we'll figure that detail out. And what's the point of this class? This class is all about if you're a product manager and you aspire to become a product leader, you want to get that role where not only are you managing products, but you're also managing product managers. This class and its counterpart, the second piece of it, will teach you all those things you need to know to be an effective leader. If you are already a product leader, but feel that you kind of aren't fully comfortable in your skin, also learning some of those things, all the details for that are on my website. And finally, don't forget to sign up for my newsletter if you haven't already. And with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. Feel free to unmute yourself and You should be able to unmute yourself. If you can't, just chat me. And are there any questions out there? By group. I saw in the chat, Manthan made a comment about AI when I was talking about that, that it's incredibly valuable. Yeah, again, if you haven't, start using it, start playing around with it. There's a learning curve to be sure to figure out how to best take advantage, a learning curve to using it, and then more importantly, a learning curve to incorporating it into your regular life. And that's a lot of stuff I'm going to be writing and talking about in the future, but definitely play around with it.
Hey, Michael, I have a question for you.
Yeah. Hey, Armando.
How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. You mentioned one of the benefits is around career growth and visibility and bias for action, really kind of looking out for your own,
Yeah.
career path. Um, Talk maybe about the balance between, actually like, you know, tooting your own horn and like doing some of the things and making other people aware of the value you bring as a product manager and a product leader versus actually, being an effective product manager and leader. So, sometimes people could feel like an urge to like convey the value they bring to the organization, but at the same time, you're kind of like showing them by doing, right? And
Yeah.
so maybe talk a little bit about that because you talk about there's a benefit of doing this, but based on your experience and how you're talking about this topic, maybe talk a little bit more about that, like the balance between those things.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question and really important. Right, you can talk about all the great things you do, but if you're not actually doing some of these, or it's going to be sort of just a hot air. So what's I think really important is uh, making sure that others around you know what you're planning on doing, do it, and then making sure they know what you've done. And I think those first and last steps we miss often. We don't, I think, over communicate about what it is we're doing. I think we tend to under communicate about that because maybe it's not uh, being asked or your manager doesn't want to micromanage you. But I think if you're proactively sharing, here's what I'm focused on, here's what I'm working on, and then you do the work, and then you come back later and say, remember, I was focused on this, here's the end result. Oh, and by the way, here's what I'm focused on for the next period of time. And start to show that you can, promise and deliver. I think that starts to get noticed and recognized. The other thing I forgot to mention in here is if you're a product manager and you have many other product management peers, um, share this with them, right? And be the first to share it with your boss and say, hey, look, I've shared this with the rest of the team. Hopefully some of them will do it as well, because now you've shown initiative not just to up level your own personal career, but those around you as well. And any good leader is not interested necessarily in only bettering themselves. Any good leader is focused entirely on seeing the ones around them rise up. So I think that starts to show some leadership as well if you can start to encourage and encourage others by socializing this with them.
Cool. Yeah, another thing that I learned early in my career was I was focused more on output versus outcomes.
Yeah.
Just because you look like you're busy and you feel like you're doing stuff, as a product manager, you're juggling multiple things sometimes. And it took me a while. Like it was probably a lesson that I learned later in my career that is very, very beneficial. So I love this template because it does force you to think about like what are the end outcomes that I want at the end of Q4 and be kind of working backwards a little bit in some ways. And it's not again about output, it's really about outcomes and more importantly about impact, right? Like us as
Yeah.
product managers, we're trying to deliver impact. And that's why they look at us. Yeah, we don't manage people, but we manage the execution and the delivery of the strategy. The whole strategy. I think of strategy as like it's your plan of how you're going to win as a company organization and things
Yep.
like that. And so I feel like this template is a really good activity to understand what is the outcomes you want and the impact that you're enabling within your organization and team.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. And you're absolutely right. I mean, outcomes is what we want to be focused on. I think there's still a good number of tech companies out there today that aren't there yet. They maybe say they want to focus on outcomes, but you're measured on output. So, if that's the case, fine, show what your output's going to be just to kind of check that box, but be sure to show the outcome as well. What's the outcome? Why are you doing it? What's the impact of the business? Because ultimately that is where when the sort of when push comes to shove, that's what we're going to be looked at as product managers. What did you do for the business? I don't care that you deploy these features. Maybe the CEO asked you to, launch these features. Great. That's no longer relevant. That's in the past. Now it's, well, why did you, and did they make an impact? So it's always got to come back to what's the impact you're having to the business. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for sharing the template.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure.
Hi, can I
Hi.
ask a question? You hear me?
Yes, Valentina, go ahead.
Yes, Valentina. Hi. I'm a new PM or PO, so it's been like 4 months. And the first 3 months were about just execution. And now it's about coming up with a roadmap and just telling about my situation. So the template you shared is for every quarter or just for the Q4? Is there any difference between the end of the year and the rest?
Yeah, great question. So um, there's no reason it can't use that every quarter. The reason I bring it up here is because there's this weird thing that happens where Q4 is expected to be incredibly productive, but oftentimes is not because of summer vacation, holidays, budgets, and
Yeah.
everything getting in the way. And so the specific point of this template was to try to shake that up so that you can actually have a productive Q4. There's absolutely no reason why you couldn't use this template for what are you going to do Q1, what are you going to do Q2, and continuing forward. I find that many other companies and product managers and product management teams might have their own quarterly methods that they plan and demonstrate what they're going to do. So if you do, I would obviously encourage using whatever it is that your leaders are expecting. But if there is nothing really structured, then you absolutely can use this to talk about what it is you're doing quarter after quarter. Definitely. And congratulations on getting to be a product manager. Hope you're enjoying it so far.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, it's very hectic to learn everything at once.
Yeah.
Uh, so I just want to ask one simple thing about the outcomes. Um, so, so you think that from the beginning you need to update, like redesign this page, and then regarding sometimes you cannot really say this is because of this feature. So, for example, if you are just revamping pages, and you cannot really tackle like this is the cause of the increase in sales. Is it a bad thing? Like, does it happen often that you cannot really say why there's an increase in sales?
Very common. Um, but I think it's our job as product managers to try to figure out or understand what that is. Now, it's very difficult sometimes to look back at, oh, our sales increased last quarter to this quarter, but we don't exactly know why. You can sometimes try to tease that out. But I think it's incredibly important to whatever it is you're building going forward, and you've tested it to make sure that it will have an impact before you actually build it completely, that it's also instrumented so you can see where there's an impact. So something you mentioned, right? Revamping pages, right? I see
Yeah.
this all the time, often. What's the, I would ask, what's the reason for the page revamps? Were they just looking old and tired, or was there a real customer problem or a customer pain point that revamping was trying to solve? There's a ton of things that we can do on our products every day, way more than we have the time, money, or resources for. Our job is to figure out which of those things are going to be the most important and the most impactful to improve our customers' experience and improve the business experience. So it's oftentimes very hard to make that connection, but I think it's important that by testing and then by instrumentation, we do our best to try to tie it back.
Then thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, Manthan.
Hey. So, as of now, I'm a product developer, but I had one question. So, because I'm into development, what do you think is the space for technical depth when it comes to as a PM? So how much do you prioritize it, or because I don't think like it directly, impacts the what do you say the overall product or whatever, but it's important from technical point of view. So.
Yeah. Some of the best product managers I've worked with and have managed were previously engineers. So uh, there's no prescribed way to get into product management. What I have talked about and written about is depending on how you get into product management or where you come from functionally will determine likely what you're very good at and where you have some weaknesses and blind spots that you'll want to focus on developing. So I think all product managers should have some level of technical knowledge. Do they have to have been engineers or written software? No. I think all product managers also have to have some understanding and empathy and understanding of customers and consumer behavior and how markets work. So, as an example, if you're an engineer and you become a product manager, you have the technical knowledge. So I think you're fine there. But you may not have that knowledge that a marketer has of understanding customers and dynamics and behavior and markets. On the flip side, if you're a marketer who comes into becoming a product manager, you have all of that, but you don't have any technical knowledge. So basically, what I guess I'm trying to say is I think it's incredible to have great technical background and come in as a product manager. Very powerful, very helpful. But what I always tell new product managers who've come from engineering is your focus the first few months is not talking to the engineering team. Your focus is talking to customers, getting out there, going on sales calls, working with marketing, going talking to customers or prospects, going to trade shows, whatever it is for the business you're in, that's going to get you as much exposure and learning to the parts of product management that you're not necessarily experienced in. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for joining. Anyone else? Questions? All right, you can always reach me on email, and if if we're on the same Slack groups, that as well. Thank you everyone for joining. I really appreciate you sharing your time with me today. Hopefully this was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you all in other Break a Pencil events in the future. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.